Sometimes life shows no mercy. It hits you in unexpected ways, traps you, shakes you, drags you down to the deepest depths. It's tough, I know. And the worst part? When every day feels the same. It's time to face the truth. Emotional strength isn't a gift. It's something you train, something you build every single day. How much longer will you let fear, doubt, and drama run your life? Most people are slaves to their minds, reacting without control, suffering the same pain over and over again. But there's another way to live, one where you're in charge, not your runaway emotions. The Stoics knew this, and for centuries they refined principles that turned the greatest leaders and thinkers into unshakable individuals. You don't have to be an ancient Roman philosopher to achieve it. Today, I'll reveal 12 Stoic habits that will give you absolute control over your mind and emotions. Stay with me, because after this, the way you face life will never be the same. Let's get to it. If this is already hitting differently, subscribe. There's a lot more where this came from, and you don't want to miss what's ahead. Membership is open if you want to go deeper. Now, drop a comment. Tell me, what's the one emotion that tends to get the better of you most often? Anger, anxiety, the need for approval? Name it. That's the first act of control. Or just write, I choose my response. 3 words. That's the whole philosophy. Let's keep going. First lesson. Train what lives between your ears. Your mind is a wild horse. Left alone, it gallops wherever it wants. Into fear, into worst-case scenarios, into stories about what people think of you, into failures that haven't happened yet. It doesn't care where it takes you. It just runs. But the moment you grab the reins, that same horse becomes the most powerful thing you own. That is the entire game. Are you holding the reins, or are you just along for the ride? Epictetus said it plainly. We are not disturbed by what happens to us, but by our thoughts about what happens to us. And he meant it literally. The difficulty itself has never been the thing that breaks people. What breaks them is the story they attach to it, not the mistake, but the thought that says, I am a failure. Not the rejection, but the conviction that says I was never enough. The event is neutral. The interpretation is where you either stand or collapse. Think about the last time your mind turned on you. Not some dramatic crisis, something ordinary. You send a message to someone you respect, and the reply comes back short, clipped, no warmth, and immediately the machinery starts. Did I say something wrong? Are they pulling away? Have I damaged this? You spend the next 3 hours inside that story, anxious and second-guessing, only to find out later they were just busy, distracted. Nothing had changed except the narrative your mind constructed in the silence. That is how most people live, reacting to the story, not to reality. And here's what makes it worse. You've been rehearsing these stories for years. The thought that says you're not capable, that the risk isn't worth it, that you'll embarrass yourself if you try. You've repeated it so many times it has started to feel like fact. But it was never fact. It was always just a thought, a mental habit dressed up as truth. Marcus Aurelius understood this at the deepest level. Ruling an empire under constant pressure, wars on the borders, betrayal inside the palace, a plague killing thousands, he still wrote in his journal, "Your mind will be like you shape it." He wasn't writing that for posterity. He was writing it as a daily reminder to himself, because even he had to fight for control of his own mind every single day. If the most powerful man in the ancient world needed that reminder, what does that tell you about the rest of us? Controlling your thoughts doesn't mean denying reality. It means refusing to let the worst interpretation of reality be the automatic one. When a challenge appears, the untrained mind immediately calculates everything that could go wrong. The trained mind asks a different question. What does this require of me? Same situation, completely different trajectory. My friend, you cannot choose what arrives at your door. You can choose what you do with it once it's there. That choice lives in the gap between what happens and how you respond, and that gap, small as it feels, is where your entire character is built. So the next time a negative thought surfaces, don't just accept it as a dispatch from reality. Hold it up and ask one question. Is this helping me move or keeping me stuck? If it's keeping you stuck, replace it. Not with blind optimism, with something more useful. Instead of "I always fail at this," try "I haven't figured it out yet." Instead of "I'm not ready," try "I'll get ready by doing it." The Stoics called this the discipline of assent, the practice of choosing which impressions you give power to and which you refuse. It sounds simple. It is not easy. But it is trainable. And that is the whole point. Your thoughts are not the truth. They are proposals. And you are the one who decides which ones get accepted. The horse is yours. The question is whether you're going to ride it or keep letting it ride you. Second lesson, stop wrestling with the river. Picture yourself in the middle of the ocean during a storm. The waves hit from every direction, the current pulls against you, and you, desperate, swim against it with everything you have. Every stroke costs you more than the last. Your muscles burn, your lungs beg, and the shore doesn't get any closer. The harder you fight, the faster you sink. Now, picture the moment you stop fighting. You let your body go horizontal, you float. The storm is still there. Nothing about it has changed. But suddenly you're moving with it instead of against it. That single decision to stop resisting what you cannot overpower is the difference between drowning and surviving. This is not a metaphor about giving up. It's a lesson about where power actually lives. The Stoics built an entire philosophy around this distinction. Epictetus, who spent years as a slave with no control over his body or his circumstances, arrived at a conclusion that became the foundation of everything. Happiness and freedom begin with a clear understanding of one principle. Some things are within our control, and some things are not. He didn't discover this in a library. He lived it in chains, and it set him free in every way that mattered. What you resist persists. This isn't poetry, it's mechanism. The more energy you pour into fighting a reality that has already arrived, the more that reality owns your attention, your mood, your hours. You lost the job. You can spend 3 weeks asking "why me?" replaying the conversation, feeding the anger, and at the end of those 3 weeks, the job is still gone. Someone let you down. You can exhaust yourself waiting for an apology that may never come, and the waiting changes nothing except your own state of mind. The situation doesn't shift. Only you suffer more. Think about being stuck in traffic. You can hit the steering wheel, curse at drivers who can't hear you, arrive tense and depleted, or you can breathe, accept that the road is what it is, and use the time for something that actually serves you. An audiobook. Silence. The light coming through the glass. My friend, in both cases the traffic is identical. The difference lives entirely in what you do with your own mind while you wait. The Stoics called this amor fati, the love of fate, not the passive resignation of someone who has stopped caring, but the active wisdom of someone who understands that energy spent cursing reality is energy stolen from building something better. Marcus Aurelius practiced this daily, not because his life was easy, it wasn't, but because he understood that a mind at war with circumstances is a mind that cannot think clearly, cannot lead, cannot act with precision. And precision was everything. Modern psychology has arrived at the same place through a different door. What Stephen Hayes built into acceptance and commitment therapy confirmed what the Stoics knew centuries earlier, that suffering is not primarily caused by difficulty, but by the refusal to stop fighting what has already happened. The pain of the event and the pain of the resistance are two separate things. You often can't avoid the first. You can always choose to release the second. So when something doesn't go as expected, the trained response is not, "Why is this happening to me?" It's, "What does this situation require now?" That shift, from protest to navigation, is where emotional untouchability actually begins. You stop asking the storm to apologize and start adjusting your sails. You cannot choose what the river does. You can choose whether you exhaust yourself fighting the current or use it to move faster toward where you're going. The one who wrestles the river always loses. The one who reads it, moves with it, and stays focused on the far bank, that person arrives. Third lesson, the one who controls the fire. Fire is one of the oldest tools humanity ever mastered. It provided warmth, cooked food, kept predators away, built civilizations. But the same fire that sustained entire communities also burned them to the ground when it got loose. The difference between fire as a tool and fire as a destroyer was never the fire itself. It was always the hand that held it. Your emotions work exactly the same way. Seneca wrote that anger, if not restrained, is more harmful to us than the injury that provokes it. He wasn't speaking abstractly. He watched men in positions of enormous power, emperors, generals, senators, make catastrophic decisions in moments of rage that cost them everything they had spent decades building. A single unguarded moment, a reaction that couldn't be taken back. The fire got loose, and it consumed the one holding it. Think about the last time an intense emotion drove your behavior. Maybe it was a conversation that escalated faster than you understood. Someone pushed back on something you said. Your body responded before your mind could intervene. Heart accelerating, jaw tightening, breathing shallowing, and suddenly you were saying things designed to wound rather than resolve. The argument that followed had nothing to do with the original issue. It was just two fires burning each other, and afterward, in the quiet, you knew exactly what had happened. The emotion had taken the wheel, and you had been a passenger. This is the mechanism. When an intense emotion hits, your body reacts first, every time, without exception. Your nervous system doesn't wait for your permission. It floods you with cortisol, tightens your muscles, narrows your focus to the perceived threat. And then, a fraction of a second later, your mind rushes to justify what your body is already doing. It builds a story. This is unbearable. They did this deliberately. I cannot let this stand. By the time you think you're making a rational decision, the emotion has already written the script. Cooling your emotions doesn't mean extinguishing them. A Stoic is not a person without fire. They are a person who has learned to use it deliberately. Marcus Aurelius felt anger. Seneca admitted to fear. Epictetus, who had every reason to be consumed by bitterness, chose clarity instead. What separated them was not the absence of emotion, but the presence of a gap, a deliberate space between feeling something and acting on it. That gap is everything, and it can be trained. When the heat rises, the first move is to question the timeline. Ask yourself whether what's burning you right now will carry the same weight in 10 days, in 10 months, in 10 years. Most of what triggers us is urgent in the moment and irrelevant in retrospect. The question doesn't eliminate the feeling, it scales it correctly. You start to see the fire for what it actually is rather than what it feels like in the peak of the moment. Then comes the harder move, the perspective shift. Step outside yourself and look at your situation as if it belongs to someone else. If a person you respected was standing where you're standing right now, feeling what you're feeling, about to do what you're about to do, what would you tell them? This is not a trick. It is a genuine cognitive reorientation, and neuroscience confirms what the Stoics practiced intuitively. Distance reduces emotional intensity and restores the capacity for clear judgment. And then, before any reaction, before any word, before any decision made in heat, the pause. 5 seconds. A single breath. One question: how would a person I respect handle this right now? That question alone has ended more unnecessary conflicts, saved more relationships, and preserved more dignity than any amount of emotional venting ever could. My friend, the people who suffer most in life are rarely the ones with the heaviest burdens. They are the ones who haven't learned to manage what they feel when the weight hits. They hand the fire to their emotions and then wonder why everything around them keeps burning. The Stoics cultivated calm with the same discipline they brought to everything else, not because they felt less, but because they understood that a mind on fire cannot see clearly. And a mind that cannot see clearly cannot act wisely. And a mind that cannot act wisely is not free, regardless of what its circumstances look like from the outside. You will be provoked. The heat will come. The only question worth asking is whether you will be the one holding the fire or the one it consumes. Lesson 4. Remember that this day will not come back. Most people live as if time were a renewable resource. They postpone the conversations that matter, delay the decisions that scare them, and move through their days at half-presence, always planning for a future version of their life that somehow never quite arrives. The question worth sitting with is this: if you knew today was your last, would you spend it the way you're spending it right now? Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Live each day as if it were your last, without distraction, without apathy, without pretending to be something you are not." He wasn't being morbid, he was being precise, because the emperor who ruled the ancient world understood something that most people spend an entire lifetime avoiding, that the awareness of endings is what gives the present its weight. I want to tell you about someone close to me. His name is Matteo, and at 38, he had built what looked from the outside like a successful life. Good job, family, apartment in the city. He was always moving, meeting to meeting, goal to goal, achievement to achievement, productive by every measurable standard. But somewhere in all that motion, he had stopped actually inhabiting his own life. He was present in every room and absent from every moment. Then, one ordinary Tuesday morning, a car ran a red light and hit him at an intersection. He wasn't badly injured, but lying in a hospital bed that night, unable to sleep, he found himself doing something he hadn't done in years, actually thinking, not about the next project or the next goal, but about his daughter's face, about his wife, about the last time he had been genuinely, unhurriedly present with the people he claimed were the whole point of everything he was working for. He couldn't remember. The days had blurred into a single continuous rush toward something he couldn't even name anymore. The accident changed nothing about his external circumstances. It changed everything about how he decided to inhabit them. What Matteo stumbled into that night, the Stoics had a name for: memento mori. Remember that you will die. Not as a morbid exercise, not as a reason for despair, but as the sharpest possible tool for cutting through everything trivial and getting honest about what actually matters. The Stoics practiced this deliberately. Marcus Aurelius returned to it constantly in his journals. Seneca built entire essays around it because they understood that human beings have a near infinite capacity for self-deception about time. We behave as though we have an unlimited supply. We don't. Psychologist Irvin Yalom spent decades working with patients facing terminal illness and arrived at a conclusion that confirms what the Stoics knew intuitively. The confrontation with death, when faced honestly, pushes people toward more authentic living. Not paralysis, not despair, clarity. The unnecessary falls away. What remains is what was always real. This is the habit, not a one-time reflection, but a daily practice. Every morning, before the day pulls you into its current, ask yourself one question. If this were the last version of this day I ever get, am I living it in a way I could stand behind? The question doesn't need to produce dramatic answers. Most days it simply sharpens your attention to the conversation you're in, to the person across from you, to the work that actually means something versus the noise you've been mistaking for urgency. My friend, time does not wait for the moment you finally feel ready to start living fully. It moves at the same pace, regardless of whether you're present for it or not. Matteo didn't need a near-death experience to learn what the Stoics had been teaching for centuries. But most of us keep waiting for that kind of jolt before we take our own lives seriously. You don't have to wait. The reminder's right here. This day will not come back. What you do with it is entirely up to you. Lesson 5. What breaks you is also what builds you. Marcus Aurelius became emperor at 39 and spent the next 2 decades facing almost continuous crisis, wars on multiple frontiers, a plague that killed millions across the empire, betrayal from people he trusted, the death of children. And through all of it, he kept writing, not complaints, not self-pity, but deliberate reflections on how to meet difficulty with a clear mind. His journals, never meant to be read by anyone else, reveal a man in constant conversation with adversity, treating every obstacle not as an interruption to his life, but as the material his life was made of. He called it the obstacle that becomes the way. What resists you shapes you. There is a particular kind of exhaustion that has nothing to do with physical tiredness. It's the exhaustion of carrying something difficult for a long time, a prolonged struggle, a loss that won't resolve, a situation that keeps demanding more than you feel you have. You know that feeling. It follows you into the evening, sits with you when the noise of the day fades, and makes it hard to let your mind settle into the rest it needs. The weight of unprocessed difficulty is one of the main reasons people cannot quiet their thoughts at night, because somewhere underneath the surface, the mind is still trying to make sense of what happened, still resisting what is. The Stoics had an answer for this, and it wasn't consolation. It was reframing at the deepest level. Epictetus taught that nothing that happens to you is inherently good or bad. It is your judgment about it that assigns the value. This sounds abstract until you apply it to something real. Think about a bone. When a bone fractures and heals correctly, it doesn't return to its previous state. It returns denser, stronger at the point of the break than it was before the injury. The body responds to damage by overbuilding. It doesn't just repair, it fortifies. Your mind operates on the same principle, if you let it. Think about someone you genuinely admire, not for their talent or their success, but for their character, the kind of person who remains steady when everything around them is unstable, who speaks with the authority of someone who has been tested and came through intact. Now ask yourself how they got there. Nobody develops that quality in comfortable conditions. Nobody builds genuine emotional resilience by avoiding the situations that require it. The strength you see in people like that was constructed piece by piece through exactly the kind of difficulty they would have preferred not to face. This is what the Stoics called ascesis, deliberate practice through resistance. The word that later became the root of asceticism originally meant training, athletic training. The image was always the gymnasium, the place where you go specifically to be stressed, to be pushed beyond your current capacity, so that when you leave, you are measurably more capable than when you arrived. Seneca applied this directly to the mind: voluntary exposure to difficulty, chosen friction, the deliberate refusal of the easy path when the harder one would build something. My friend, the gym metaphor is not poetic. It is biological. Every time you lift a weight past the point of comfort, muscle fibers experience microscopic damage. They tear. And then, during rest, they rebuild thicker and more resilient than before. Remove the resistance and the muscle doesn't maintain. It atrophies. The body requires challenge to stay strong. So does the character. So when life corners you, when the project collapses, when the relationship fractures, when the plan you built carefully falls apart, the Stoic question is not why is this happening to me? It is what is this making available? Not because suffering is good in itself, but because your response to it is one of the few things that remains entirely within your control. And that response, chosen deliberately rather than defaulted into, is where your actual character gets written. James Baldwin, one of the sharpest observers of human nature in the 20th century, wrote that not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. The Stoics would have recognized that immediately. Resistance to reality costs you twice, once in the difficulty itself, and again in the energy spent refusing to accept it. You are not being punished by what is hard. You are being given material. The question is whether you're going to curse the weight or use it. Lesson 6. Every complaint is a vote against yourself. You know that voice, the one that wakes up before you do and starts immediately, cataloging everything wrong, everything unfair, everything that hasn't gone the way it should, the job that doesn't pay what you deserve, the people who don't appreciate what you give, the circumstances that always seem to conspire against you specifically. You've been carrying that internal monologue for so long, it has started to feel like honesty, like you're simply being realistic about your situation. But here's what that voice is actually doing. It's building a cage around you, one complaint at a time, and handing you the bars to hold yourself. Epictetus said it without softening. Don't explain your problems, solve them. 4 words that contain an entire philosophy. Because every moment you spend articulating why something is hard, why the odds are against you, why it isn't fair, that moment is gone. You didn't use it to move. You used it to stand still and feel justified about standing still. And the situation remains exactly where it was, unmoved by your verdict on it. Think about what complaining actually does neurologically. Every time you rehearse a grievance, out loud to a friend, silently to yourself at night, in the slow burn of resentment you carry through your day, you are reinforcing a neural pathway. You are literally training your brain to find evidence for the story that you are stuck, that you are limited, that the world is arranged against you. What you repeat becomes what you see. What you see becomes what you believe. What you believe becomes what you do. And what you do becomes your life. Marcus Aurelius governed an empire for nearly 2 decades under conditions that would have broken most people before the first year was out. Wars that didn't end, a plague that killed indiscriminately, political betrayal from people inside his own circle, the loss of children. And not once, in the thousands of words he left behind in his private journals, written for no audience with no reason to perform, not once did he frame his circumstances as something being done to him that he was powerless to address. He wrote about obstacles as material, about difficulty as the specific terrain his character was being asked to navigate. Complaining to him was not humility. It was abdication. My friend, consider 2 people facing the same setback, a business they built carefully that collapses after 3 years of work. The first person spends the following months in a loop, telling the story to anyone who will listen, refining the narrative of who was at fault, collecting agreement that, yes, it was unfair, yes, they deserved better. They are not lying, it probably was unfair. But 6 months later, they are still in the same place, sustained entirely by the rightness of their grievance. The second person feels the loss genuinely, fully, without performing Stoicism, and then asks one question: what now? They don't pretend it didn't hurt, they just refuse to let the hurt become their permanent address. A year later, they are building something new with the specific knowledge that only failure at scale can give you. The difference between those 2 people was not talent, luck, or circumstance. It was the decision about where to direct energy. This is what the Stoics understood about complaints that most people miss. Complaining is not the release valve it feels like. It feels like relief because it temporarily transfers the weight onto fate, onto other people, onto the universe's indifference. But the weight doesn't go anywhere. It just gets heavier with each retelling because now your identity is wrapped up in it. Now you need the story to be true because if it isn't, what have you been doing with your time? The Stoic move is not to deny that things are hard. It is to refuse the role of someone to whom hard things simply happen. You are not a passive recipient of your circumstances. You are an agent inside them. Limited, yes. Imperfect, yes. But capable of choosing your next move, regardless of what the previous one cost you. Every complaint is a vote for the version of yourself that can't. Every action, however small, is a vote for the version that can. You have been voting for a long time. The question is whether you're happy with who's winning. Lesson 7. Guard your hours. Like your life depends on it. There is a story about Seneca that has stayed with me. Near the end of his life, writing to his friend Lucilius, he opened the letter with something that reads, less like philosophy and more like a confession. Ita fac mi Lucili, vindica te tibi. Claim yourself for yourself. He wasn't talking about money or reputation or status. He was talking about time, specifically about the casual, almost unconscious way most people allow their hours to be taken from them without protest. Seneca had spent years inside Nero's court, watching power consume everything around him, and what disturbed him most wasn't the violence or the corruption. It was the waste. Brilliant people surrendering their most irreplaceable resource to things that deserved none of it. He wrote, Omnia aliena sunt, tempus tantum nostrum est. Everything is borrowed, only time is truly ours. Think about what your average day actually looks like, not the version you describe to someone asking, but the real one. The 30 minutes that dissolve into a phone before you've fully woken up. The conversation you stay in out of politeness long after it's stopped serving either person. The hours spent consuming content that leaves no trace in you by evening. None of it feels like theft while it's happening. It feels like rest, like connection, like staying informed. But by the time night arrives and your mind is finally quiet enough to hear itself, there is often a specific kind of hollowness, the feeling of a day that passed through you without leaving much behind. That hollowness is what stolen time feels like from the inside. And here is what makes it worse. You would never hand your wallet to a stranger without resistance. You would never agree to work 3 hours for nothing. But the same hours, surrendered to distraction and obligation and other people's priorities, those go without a fight almost every day. A friend of mine spent 2 years telling himself he would start writing the book he had been carrying in his head for nearly a decade. He had the idea, he had the knowledge, he had everything except the protected time to actually do it. Every week something filled the space where the work should have been. A favor for a colleague, an event he felt obligated to attend, an evening that evaporated into scrolling. He wasn't lazy. He was just chronically undefended against the demands of other people's agendas. 2 years passed. The book remained exactly where it had always been, theoretical, weightless, perpetually about to begin. Then something shifted. He started treating 2 hours every morning the way he treated a medical appointment, immovable, non-negotiable, not subject to the requests that accumulated around it. Within 8 months, the book existed. Nothing about his circumstances had changed. Only his relationship to his own time had. The Stoics were precise about this. Marcus Aurelius returned to it repeatedly in his journals. The discipline of presence, the refusal to let the current moment be colonized by things that neither required nor deserved it. Wasted attention was wasted life. There was no meaningful distinction between the two. And at night, when the mind finally releases its grip on the day's demands, what determines whether you sleep with any sense of peace is largely this: whether the hours you spent felt like yours, or whether they felt borrowed and given away to things that didn't earn them. This is not about productivity in the mechanical sense, squeezing more output from every minute, optimizing your schedule into something inhuman. It is about something quieter and more fundamental, about whether the way you spend your days reflects what you actually value or whether you have simply been reacting to whatever arrived loudest. Every yes you give to something that doesn't serve you is a no to something that does. That trade happens constantly, invisibly, until one day the accumulation becomes undeniable. The project that never started, the skill that never developed, the relationship that needed time you kept meaning to give it. My friend, if someone offered to buy 3 hours of your life for nothing in return, you would refuse immediately. Guard them the same way when the offer comes disguised as habit, obligation, or distraction. Seneca knew it 2,000 years ago, and it has not changed. You are not short on time. You are short on defense of it. Start there. Lesson 8. Comfort is the quietest way to stay small. When was the last time you did something that genuinely scared you? Not a dramatic, life-altering risk, something smaller than that. The conversation you kept postponing because you didn't know how it would land. The project you didn't submit because it wasn't perfect yet. The opinion you swallowed in a room full of people because the cost of saying it out loud felt too high. When was the last time you chose the harder option deliberately, knowing it would cost you something, and did it anyway? If you're struggling to answer that, the comfort has already been working on you longer than you realize. This is how it happens, not dramatically, not all at once. Comfort is quiet. It doesn't announce itself as weakness. It arrives as relief, as reasonable caution, as the perfectly logical decision to wait until conditions are better. And slowly, without any single moment you could point to as the turning point, your range shrinks. The things that once felt like reasonable challenges start feeling like threats. The muscle that handles difficulty atrophies the same way any muscle does, not through injury, but through disuse. The Stoics understood this with a clarity that modern comfort culture finds deeply inconvenient. They didn't seek suffering. That's a common misreading. What they practiced was voluntary resistance, deliberate friction, the conscious choice to engage with difficulty before difficulty arrived uninvited, so that when it did arrive, and it always does, they were not meeting it for the first time. Epictetus understood this at a level most of us will never be required to reach. Born into slavery, his body owned by another man, he endured treatment that would have consumed most people entirely. His master, a notoriously cruel man, once twisted his leg with such sustained brutality that the bone broke. Epictetus during it said only, "If you continue, you will break it." No screaming, no begging. Not because he felt nothing, but because he had already established through years of internal discipline that his master owned his body but nothing else. His mind was not available for conquest. He was eventually freed. And what he did with his freedom was not rest or retreat, it was teach. He built a school. He shaped the thinking of Marcus Aurelius, who read his work and carried it into the governance of an empire. The man who had every justification to be defined by what had been done to him chose instead to be defined by what he built from it. The suffering didn't disappear. It became the specific material his philosophy was made of. Now, ask yourself honestly, what is the discomfort you have been avoiding that is quietly keeping you smaller than you could be? There is a particular kind of restlessness that visits people at night when the distractions of the day have finally gone quiet and the mind is left alone with itself. It is not anxiety exactly. It is more like an unresolved awareness. The sense that something in you is capable of more than you are currently asking of it. That the version of your life you are living and the version you could be living are not the same, and the gap between them is made almost entirely of avoided discomfort. That feeling is not your enemy. It is information. It is the mind recognizing in the quiet what the noise of the day helps you ignore. My friend, you don't need to manufacture suffering or pursue hardship for its own sake. The Stoics were never interested in pain as performance. What they were interested in was the specific kind of growth that only resistance produces, the mental density that comes from choosing the harder path consistently enough that difficulty stops feeling like an exception and starts feeling like familiar terrain. Wake up before you're ready. Have the conversation before you feel confident enough. Start the work before the conditions are perfect. Take the project no one else wants and find out what it teaches you. Each of these choices is small in isolation. Accumulated over months, they build something that comfort never could, a mind that has been tested enough to trust itself. Because when life eventually presents you with something you didn't choose and couldn't prepare for, and it will, the question won't be whether you're comfortable. The question will be whether you've built something inside you that can hold. Discomfort chosen deliberately is preparation. Discomfort avoided consistently is fragility in slow motion. The tree that grows on the exposed ridge survives the storm. The one raised in shelter doesn't know what's coming. Lesson 9. You become what surrounds you. The Stoics had a concept they returned to repeatedly, that the philosopher could not exist in isolation. Not because solitude was dangerous, but because character is forged in relationship. You cannot practice patience without people who test it. You cannot develop generosity without someone to give to. You cannot sharpen your thinking without minds that push back against yours. The idea of the self-constructed person built entirely from within, hermetically sealed from outside influence. The Stoics would have recognized it immediately as a fiction. Marcus Aurelius opened his meditations not with philosophy, but with gratitude. Page after page naming the specific people who had shaped him. His grandfather's composure, his father's humility, his teacher's rigor. The most powerful man in the ancient world began his private journal by acknowledging how much of what he was had been built by others. That wasn't weakness, that was precision. Look honestly at the people you spend the most time with, not the people you admire from a distance or follow online, the ones physically present in your daily life, the ones whose voices you hear most often, whose attitudes saturate your environment, whose way of meeting the world gradually becomes the water you swim in. Are they people who take responsibility for their lives, or people who have made a permanent home in blame? Are they building something or rehearsing why building is impossible? Are they the kind of people who, when you leave their company, make you feel more capable or less? This is not a comfortable audit. Some of the people who drain you are people you love. Some of the relationships that limit you are ones you have invested years in. The Stoics were not sentimental about this. Seneca wrote plainly that spending time with people who corrode your standards is a form of self-harm, regardless of your affection for them. That doesn't mean abandoning everyone who struggles. It means being honest about the direction the influence runs, and whether you are consistently lifting or consistently being pulled down. My friend, your environment is not just background, it is input. The attitudes you are surrounded by become the attitudes you rehearse. The standards of the people closest to you become the standards you unconsciously measure yourself against. A person trying to build discipline while surrounded by people who mock discipline is not just swimming upstream, they are trying to build upstream while the current is actively dismantling what they construct. Think about what iron does to iron. The blacksmith doesn't soften metal with softness. He uses heat, pressure, and the resistance of hard surfaces against each other. The people who genuinely make you better are rarely the ones who only comfort you. They are the ones who expect something from you, who notice when you are operating below your own standards, who tell you the thing you needed to hear rather than the thing that would have been easier to say. That friction is not cruelty. It is the specific mechanism through which character develops in relationship. Seneca built his deepest philosophy through his correspondence with Lucilius, letters that challenged, pushed, and refined both men across years of exchange. Epictetus taught in a school where the entire method was dialogue, challenge, and the deliberate discomfort of having your assumptions questioned by someone who refused to let you off the hook. Even Marcus Aurelius, who had every reason to surround himself with people who agreed with him, actively sought out teachers and thinkers who would make his thinking harder, not easier. The quality of your inner circle is not a social preference. It is a philosophical decision with direct consequences for who you become. And there is something worth noticing about how this connects to the quieter hours, the ones at the end of the day when the noise recedes and you are left with your own thoughts. The residue of your environment settles then. The conversations you had, the attitudes you absorbed, the standards you were held to or failed to be held to, all of it surfaces when the mind finally goes still. People who spend their days surrounded by smallness carry that smallness into the night. People surrounded by those who demand more of them tend to rest with a different quality of conscience. You become what surrounds you. This is not metaphor, it is mechanism. Choose accordingly. Lesson 10. Feed your mind or it will feed on you. What have you put into your mind today? Not what you intended to, what actually went in. The first thing you reached for when you woke up, the content that played in the background while you moved through your morning. The conversations you stayed in, the ones you sought out, the thoughts you rehearsed on the way to wherever you were going. Most people could not answer that question with any precision because most people treat their mind like a public space, open to everything, curated by nothing, shaped by whatever happens to arrive. And then they wonder why it feels so hard to think clearly, why the anxiety is always there, just beneath the surface, why at the end of the day when things finally go quiet, the mind won't settle. Marcus Aurelius wrote something in his private journals that stopped me the first time I read it. The soul takes on the color of its thoughts. He wasn't speaking poetically. He was making a precise observation about mechanism, that the mind is not a neutral container that holds your experiences without being changed by them. It is a living structure that is continuously shaped by what passes through it. What you repeatedly expose it to becomes its default architecture, its resting color. This is what modern neuroscience calls experience-dependent plasticity. The brain physically reorganizes itself around the patterns it rehearses most. Attention is not passive observation, it is construction. Every time you direct your focus somewhere, you are strengthening the neural pathways associated with that direction. Focus on threats long enough, and threat detection becomes your mind's dominant mode. Feed it evidence of failure, and it will find failure everywhere it looks. The Stoics didn't have the neuroscience, but they had the observation, and they arrived at the same conclusion 2,000 years earlier. Epictetus taught that the most dangerous thing a person could do was treat their attention as something expendable. Not because distraction was morally wrong, but because attention is the instrument through which everything else in your life is built or destroyed. A carpenter with a damaged tool builds damaged things. A mind that has been trained through years of unconscious habit to dwell in complaint, in comparison, in the consumption of whatever is loudest and most stimulating, does not suddenly produce clarity and strength on demand. It produces what it has been built to produce. Think about what you consumed in the last week, the news you followed, the conversations you chose or failed to remove yourself from, the content you fed yourself in the hours before sleep, when the mind is most receptive and most vulnerable to whatever it is given last. All of it went somewhere. None of it passed through without leaving a trace. The question is not whether your environment is shaping your mind. It is whether you are shaping your environment deliberately enough to have any say in the outcome. Here is a simple test. Spend one day paying attention to how you feel after each thing you consume, not during, after. After the news cycle, after the social media scroll, after the conversation with the person who always leaves you feeling vaguely worse about everything. Notice the residue. Most people have never done this with any consistency because it requires admitting something uncomfortable, that a significant portion of what they voluntarily consume is making them weaker, not stronger, and they have been choosing it anyway. The Stoics practiced what they called prosoche, attention to the self, a continuous, disciplined awareness of what was entering the mind and what effect it was producing. Not paranoia, not ascetic withdrawal from the world, but the basic adult responsibility of knowing what you are feeding yourself and why. Marcus Aurelius practiced it daily. Seneca structured his evenings around it, reviewing what had entered his mind that day, what had served him, what had not, and correcting course before sleep so that the night carried something worth carrying. My friend, you cannot think your way to a stronger mind while continuously filling it with material that produces weakness. The inputs and the outputs are not separate systems, they are the same system. What goes in determines what comes out, in your decisions, in your emotional responses, in the quality of your attention when something genuinely important demands it. A river takes the color of the terrain it runs through. Run it through clarity long enough and it clears. Run it through sediment and it carries that sediment everywhere it goes. You are the one who chooses the terrain. Where your attention goes, your mind follows. Where your mind goes, your life follows. That is not a challenge. That is simply how it works. Emotional untouchability is not something you find. It's something you build, one choice at a time. Every thought you master, every reaction you pause before acting on, every moment you choose depth over distraction, that is the work. And the work never really stops. The Stoics didn't promise an easy life. They promised a prepared mind. That preparation starts today, not when conditions improve. If this video has given you something real, subscribe. There's more ahead worth staying for. And drop a comment with the habit that hit you hardest, the uncomfortable one. That's exactly where you start. Right below. I choose my response. Reaching the end of this video is no accident. It means something in you wants to grow, and that already sets you apart from most. Subscribe and share this video with someone who needs it. That simple gesture helps us keep spreading this message of growth. On screen, you'll find a playlist to go even deeper. Click and let's keep learning together.